Hey, it's Drybear. Diablo 4 Season 2 is just about to start, and there's a lot of questions right now around what is going to be the fastest leveling method to get you to the endgame in Torment 4, World Tier 4, and start building your endgame build for progress. Now, in the past, I've done detailed XP guides and spreadsheets going over all the best XP in the game, but unfortunately, this time around, there's too many unknowns about how the game is going to work going into Season 2. They've reworked how all of the damage systems work. They've reworked how all the monsters work, how all the bosses work. They've rescaled everything. They've done tons of changes to XP. They've reworked incenses, elixirs, all kinds of bonuses for world tier. All of these things are changing. On top of that, we still don't know exactly how good the XP is going to be from the blood harvest, which is the overworld activity for Season 2 and all the vampiric enemies you're going to face. So rather than going through a detailed, here's the exact best method, today I'm going to talk about all the changes you've missed since the start of Season 1 for XP specifically, and talk about what you want to do in order to get your character to max as quickly as possible. So let's start by going through the history of the changes so we're all aware of where we stand right now with XP, monsters, and everything going into patch 1.2 coming out on Tuesday. First, with 1.1.1, the patch that followed the patch that everybody hated, there was a relatively sizable monster density increase. The monster density went up, which means our XP went up. Following that, in patch 1.1.4, they increased the seasonal XP bonus maximum from the Urn of Aggression from 8% to 20%, and it does seem like they're going to keep that for Season 2, which means your seasonal XP bonus is going to be better than it was in the first half of Season 1 at the start of Season 2. Then we have the big patch 1.2.0 on Tuesday, and there's a bunch of changes going to this. There's also, I will warn you, a bunch of what I'm calling trust me bros, where there's just a lot of changes they didn't detail in the patch that they just kind of put down and saying, hey, we did this, it should be better. So there's a lot of we don't know until we actually get the patch and play it. And these are things including like a bunch of dungeons, they didn't say how many, have been rerouted, their layouts have been changed, the placement of objectives have changed, where they put the events have changed, how the doors are set up have changed. We don't know exactly where that's going to be, but they know that some amount of dungeons, a non-zero amount of dungeons, is going to be different than they were before. Now, what's important about that specifically is going to be this change here. In the patch on Tuesday, they will be doing two major changes to timed events in the game. And these are the events that you get like a cursed shrine inside of a dungeon or in the overworld that have been changed. They have greatly increased the monster density for about 7 of those event types, and they've greatly increased the progression speed, like how it goes through each stage of that event, for about 6 events in the game. Now, this could make dungeons even better than they were before. Some dungeons almost always have an event in them. You go in there and it says, you there, adventurer, help me. We got to get out of here. You know, that sort of thing. Those could be really, really good. They were already, for the most part, very good for XP. But if the density goes way up and they're much faster to clear, that could make dungeons really, really strong. So be on the lookout for that. So that's like the dungeon portion. And I still think that once you hit level 50, if you really care about just your build and just doing everything optimally, then Nightmare Dungeons is still going to be your best bet because you still need to level your glyphs. Your best loot is going to come from these, and there's going to be some nice events in there. However, they are now highly incentivizing overworld activity to the point where if you are just playing Diablo 4 Season 2 for fun, I would highly recommend just doing overworld from 1 until all the way up until 100, and just doing Nightmare Dungeons when you can or when you have the right sigils, as these are going to be very, very valuable for you. So let's talk about the changes they've made to the overworld in XP that you want to be aware of. First of all, the completion bonus for clearing Legion events has gone up 75%. So now, not only were Legion events were usually just a couple minutes, and they were a little hard to get to because they were short, but they have changed it so the warning for the Legion event is longer. I think they doubled the time from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. So it's going to be a lot easier to get to the Legion event on time because you'll be warned sooner. And the completion bonus for the Legion events has gone up significantly. And remember that every Legion event after, I think, level 25 is always going to drop a legendary. And I think they can even drop uniques now as well. So be able to get that out of it, high value from the Legion event. So I think you want to focus on getting Legion events if they're up. Another reason why you want to do the overworld is because they have greatly improved the power of elixirs and incenses. Incenses now grant an XP bonus along with elixirs. Both of those now apply bonus XP. They also stack multiplicatively, and they also stack multiplicatively with the world tier XP bonus as well. Not only that, but incenses, just like elixirs, will persist on death, which means that you can keep them active, you get XP out of it. Why is this important? Most elixirs and incenses require you to farm overworld materials like herbs or ores and things like that in order to craft them. And if you're spending all of your time doing dungeons or speed running something, you're not going to have the materials you need to craft lots of elixirs and incenses. So keep that in mind, that these are going to be super valuable now. So you do want to do overworld activities from that standpoint. Also, they made it so higher world tiers multiplicative applies in a party as well. And they also increased the XP that you get for killing higher level monsters that are higher level than you. And as you go higher and higher, this value gets a little bit better over time. So grouping is good again. Killing higher level monsters is not as good as it was, but it's better than it was in season 1. So you are kind of incentivized to go as high as you efficiently can without slowing yourself down too much. On top of that, Helltide and Whispers got significantly better. They increased the XP bonus you get from opening a World Tier 3 Helltide chest, any of them, by 375% and 750% for World Tier 4. This is opening, so once you get enough cinders, you go to the chest, you open it, you get a big bonus of XP. This makes Helltides a lot more worthwhile. And keep in mind that in Season 2, clearing Helltides, Whispers, Legion events, doing your Nightmare dungeons, all of those drop materials that allow you to summon the endgame bosses. So as you get into World Tier 3 and 4, you will want to do these anyways for those crafting materials and the other things that you get, the unique materials that you need for upgrading your gear, so on and so forth. On top of that, Whispers got even better. At the start of Season 1, Whispers was for casual players that were just kind of playing for fun. Whispers was by far the best way to level in general. It was very fast, very efficient. As long as you're constantly doing activities that grant grim favors, it was the best way to level, unless you wanted to sweat it out in a stronghold or push dungeons really, really hard with fast resets. Whispers were insanely good. And they're getting even better. So now in World Tier 1 and World Tier 2, the bonus that you get for completing activities that have grim favors has been increased by 200%, which means doing Whispers in World Tier 1 and World Tier 2 up to level 50 is now way better than it was before. World Tier 3 and World Tier 4 also got that XP bonus increased. And on top of that, the bonus for completing the actual activity for getting grim favors has been increased in general as well. So any activity that gives 1 grim favor, that XP bonus has been doubled. Any activity that gives 2 grim favors, 75% XP, and any activity that gives 3 grim favors, 150% increase to that. They didn't change the dungeon bonuses, which are 5 grim favors usually, but all the activities that are 1, 2, and 3, which are all the overworld activities, their XP values has gone up significantly. So what's the TLDR? What's the takeaway from this that you have to know? First of all, mob density has gone up a bunch. XP increase for seasonal has gone up a bunch. Events are even better than they were before, and all the overworld activities are significantly improved for XP. So if you're asking me what is the best way to level 1 to 100 for someone who is just getting started in Season 2, I would recommend this. This is what I recommend for a chill speed leveling session from 1 to 100 in Season 2, the Season of Blood. First, make your seasonal character, skip the campaign unless you really want to do it. It's not as fast, it is fun, but you're still going to see a lot of the bosses in there now in Season 2. And I would recommend starting World Tier 1. The big thing about this is that World Tier 2 is now a little bit more viable, but it's still going to be a little bit slower. Now, it could be that since they are pushing a lot of people into the overworld with the new activities, a lot of the speedrunners and speed farmers might end up in the overworld. You might be able to do World Tier 2 as long as you have like people around you or you're just doing overworld activities. But if you're dying a lot or it's going slower, just keep in mind that you probably want to just move that. But you also want to know that these are now going to be multiplicative increases on experience along with your consumables, elixirs, incenses, things like that. So if you can do World Tier 2, you should do it. If you can't, if you're meeting any kind of wall where it's slowing you down or you're dying or you're not even having fun anymore, just do World Tier 1. It's not that much better. And it's definitely worse if you are dying constantly in World Tier 2. So do World Tier 1. The next thing you're going to want to do is you want to immediately progress the seasonal quest as far as you can. So in season 1, the season of the Malignant, when you first spawn in Kyovashad after skipping the campaign, you'll spawn here and then you'll have a guy to talk to that starts the seasonal quest. I'm assuming it's going to be the same in season 2 in that you will want to start that quest because the blood harvests are all over the map, the vampiric powers, all of the seasonal activities and events won't start until you progress that seasonal quest. And in season 1, there was a big holdback where if you didn't progress the Malignant quest line far enough, you actually had to go back to World Tier 1 and fight Varshan, and then World Tier 2 and fight Varshan because you hadn't been progressing the quest along the way. So I would recommend just starting with the seasonal quest, doing it immediately, and then just keeping it up to date and going as far as you can with it. So you always have that caught up, and it will help bridge the gap on some of the levels, which is really nice. Next, depending on where the seasonal quest drops you off at level 1 or after level 1, you want to get to at least level 10 in my experience. After doing a bunch of tests, there are some very high density dungeons at level 1 that you can run that are significantly better XP than anything else you're going to do. They just, because of the mob density, Lost Tunnels or Lost Archives is right next to Kyovashad. High density, you can get to level 10 in like a single dungeon clear. It's incredibly fast. There's also a bunch of level 1s in Skosglen that are really good to run. But honestly, my route is just going to spawn in Kyovashad, depending on where the seasonal quest drops me off. If I'm under level 10, I'm just going to jump over, do one Lost Archives. We'll be level 12 or something like that, and we'll be ready to jump into the next part. So I think it's actually very important to do this because initially you're not going to have your skills active. There's not going to be too much going on. It's very easy to just pump those early levels just by doing a single dungeon, clear mob density, and then that's when the whisper bonuses and things like that start taking over dramatically. Then when it comes to overworld activities, do them in this priority. World bosses are much better. The loot has improved. The XP should be pretty good. And not only that, but they're spawning every 3.5 hours instead of every 6 hours. And they have a longer warning time as well, just like Legion events. So it should be easier to get there in between activities if you're paying attention. So world boss is your highest priority because they are the least frequent. The next highest is Legion event because they're probably the highest XP density and they're very fast as well. Then do Whisper Grim Favor activities. And the best way to do this is to try and just go to an area that has the Whisper activities going on. You see these Grim Favor activities here. If you have a dungeon that's there and decent and you can do it, pop in and do it. 5 Grim Favors plus the XP from the dungeon is going to be really good. Again, if it's a dungeon that has an event in it, that XP value is going to be really high. And then otherwise, just do the rest of the Grim Favor activities. When you finish, go turn in the Grim Favor Whisper. The Whisper caches give a lot better loot and way more experience than they did ever before. So stay on top of that. After you have all these, if you can line it up, do Helltide as well. I think Helltide, the XP value is higher, though the XP value it's decent for the mobs and much better for the caches. So like if you get a point where there's a Helltide active and a Grim Favor on top of it, and there's a Legion event inside of it, right? You want to kind of line those all up. That's why I'm not telling you which one's the best. I'm just telling you the priority order. If you can find, a world boss that gives Grim Favors, then that's huge. If I Legion event that's inside of a Helltide, that's huge, right? Try and line these all up the best that you can. But if there's conflicts, you can follow just a priority order. The last thing that we want to know about is the Blood Harvest. And it's going to be basically a Helltide adjacent like event. Rather than the big red on the map, there's going to be like this kind of seasonal green on the map in a different area. And it'll have seasonal activities and mobs and resources and all kinds of materials that you can gather from that event. Just like it was with season 1, we have no idea how good the XP is going to be here. The XP for the Malignant Tunnels on season 1 launch was pretty abysmal and ended up being really slow. So we just couldn't know ahead of time since they don't let us PTR or PTB anything. So I would recommend kind of just putting this towards the bottom. It could end up being really good. And if so, I'll update you guys. But just keep in mind that you want to be doing these at least for the vampiric powers and the seasonal rewards and the rapport the rapport that you have to get in order to progress the seasonal vendor. But from that, just kind of go through this priority order. Then I would recommend actually sticking in a world tier a little bit longer than before. If you want to, you can do like level 40 to go to world tier 3, level 60 to go to world tier 4. But actually, I think with the changes to the overworld, you don't actually need to rush to the next world tier as fast as you had before. The XP values for clearing quickly are just perfectly good. And keep in mind that the bonuses for finishing a cache, the bonuses for completing a Legion event, the bonuses for all of these are so high now, you can kind of just work your way through it. Now, if you're really comfortable in your build, you can push right into World Tier 3, World Tier 4 at like level 40 and level 60. But I think now with all the changes, you can kind of work your way towards it like level 45, level 65, and you'll be just fine. Then the last thing you want to look at when you're into World Tier 3 and World Tier 4 is you want to start running Nightmare Dungeons. You might find that Nightmare Dungeons have a, like they're lined up here, like they have a Whisper Grim Favor lined up. And if you have that, pop it and do it. And you might want to keep a bunch of sigils on you in case there is something like that, because that's going to give you so much value from completing that in general. Super fun, super valuable. And you do want to be leveling your glyphs, but they sped up the glyph leveling process in general. They said that overall, it's going to be 40% faster or so to get from level 1 to level 100 as it was before. So if you're someone who was getting stuck at like level 65, level 70, you probably will very easily, with the same amount of effort, get to level 100 in season 2. So that's my recommendation. That's what I recommend for season 2. Hope you guys enjoy. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and I'll see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.